press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Students, let us continue from the point where we left in the last class. We are going through with the chapter ecosystem. Under that, in the last class, we discussed about one of the gaseous cycle, that is carbon cycle. Well, with reference to it, you know that when we study chemical composition of a living organism, the carbon constitute 49% of the total dry weight of an organism. How much? In an organism, carbon constitute 49% of the dry weight of an organism, only next to water content. If you look at the global carbon quantity in global, you know that 71% of carbon is found dissolved in ocean. The oceanic reservoir of carbon regulates the carbon dioxide in atmosphere. What are the point we discussed? So, in an organism, with reference to its dry weight, the total carbon will account for 49%. Next highest lowest only to water. Water will be the highest, then only the carbon comes. And you know that when we look at the carbon dioxide in overall global, 71% of the carbon is found dissolved in ocean. And this oceanic reservoir of carbon regulates the carbon level in atmosphere. And whereas the atmospheric content of carbon will be just 1%. So, just 1% will be the atmospheric content. The fossil fuels like petrol, diesel, etc. they are also the reservoir for carbon. The carbon cycling will occur through atmosphere, the ocean, and the living and dead organisms. It will be cycled through ocean and atmosphere and living organisms and dead organisms. So, carbon cycling will occur through all of these four. And according to one estimate, annually in overall the biosphere, 4 into 10 to the power of 3, 10 to the power of 13. This much kg of carbon, 4 into 10 to the power of 13 kg of carbon will be fixed annually by all the green plants found in the ocean as well as land. So, they will going to fix through photosynthesis. Photosynthesis in overall globe, or you can say the biosphere, will account for fixing 4 into 10 to the power of 13 kgs of carbon will be fixed by green plants during photosynthesis annually. And especially, you know that very considerable amount of carbon will come back to atmosphere. This fixed carbon, considerable amount, will come back to atmosphere by producers, that is plants, and also consumers, through which the carbon flows through energy cycle as respiratory release of these organisms will form the considerable part of the fixed carbon by plants during photosynthesis will come back to atmosphere through the respiratory releases of the both plants as well as the animals. And you know the next one are decomposers. So decomposers. So the decomposers area are bacteria and fungi. They constitute what we call them as the decomposers. They play a very important role in the process of decomposition of dead matter. You know that while the waste matter and the dead, when it is decomposed, the carbon dioxide again will come back to the atmosphere. And especially some part of fixed carbon, the fixed carbon by plants will be lost to sediments, especially in ocean, and this is lost from the circulation. Very rare instances it may come back. So some part of fixed carbon, very small part of fixed carbon, may be lost to the sediments, okay, which may not get back into circulation. The conditions like burning of wood and the combustion of the fossil fuels, the burning of wood, burning of forest, burning of wood, ಸೌದೆಯನ್ನು ಉರಿಸೋದು, forest fire, and then we have combustion of organic matter, and also the combustion of fossil fuels like petrol, diesel, kerosene, etc. and volcanic activities, that is activities from the volcanoes, volcanic activities. So you know that these are the additional sources. These are the additional sources for the carbon dioxide release to the atmosphere. Okay, I think we were just going through with what we had discussed in the earlier class, that is carbon cycle. You know that the carbon cycle is a gaseous cycle, and particularly the organism's dry weight, the 49% of the organism's dry weight will be constituted by carbon. It is just less than water only. And then coming back, you know that the major part of the global carbon is found in ocean. It is around 71%. and it is a major reservoir for carbon which regulates the amount of carbon in atmosphere. And you know that in atmosphere only just 1% of carbon will be there. And you know that the carbon cycle will occur through ocean, atmosphere, living and non-living. And particularly it has been estimated that annually around especially 4 into the 10 to the power of 13 kgs of carbon will be fixed. And coming on to carbon as such, you know that the respiratory release of the plants and animals constitute the major part of fixed carbon coming back to the atmosphere. And also the decomposers will also play a very important role, that is pivotal role in releasing the carbon while the decomposition process is going on. Yeah. And apart from that, the fossil fuels also will be the reservoirs and burning of wood, then the forest fire, then combustion of organic matter, fossil fuels, combustion of fossil fuels, the volcanic activities will be the other additional source for the carbon dioxide release. And you all know that the human activities like deforestation, that is cutting down the forest, and also using especially fossil fuels, for energy production and also for transport. So you know that the humans will use the fossil fuels for energy production. Okay, you know that we use generators, and in that we will be using the fossil fuels, and some generators will be using petrol, in some we will be using the diesel, in some we will be using kerosene. And also you know that we are using in vehicles, we are using all these fossil fuels. This is significantly has increased the carbon dioxide level in atmosphere. So all this will lead to increase in carbon dioxide level in atmosphere, and you know that it's a major greenhouse gas. The carbon is a major greenhouse gas, its contribution. And all these effects you have studied in the last chapter, that is environmental issues, where you have elaborately studied the greenhouse effect. And this is what exactly will be the carbon cycle. And now we will be moving over to one of the sedimentary cycle. So under that we have sulfur cycle as well as phosphorus cycle. Here we will going to discuss about the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus cycle. It is one of the sedimentary cycles. Sedimentary cycle. Say, the phosphorus is the major constituent of the biological membranes. Say, biological membranes. See, whenever we talk about biological membranes, we talk about the cell membrane. See, where you talk about the cell membrane, the membrane that is the outermost covering in an animal cell, where it is inner to the cell wall in case of plant cell. We all call the cell membrane as a living membrane, and we say that it has got PLP model, proteins with a lipid layer. In lipid constituent of the cell membrane, we say that it is a phospholipid having that phosphate head. Very important constituent of the phosphate is one of the important constituent of the the biological membrane, example cell membrane. Yes, in the first year you have studied the fluid mosaic model proposed by Singer and Nicholson. There you have studied the proteins will be in between the two phospholipid bilayers. And apart from that, you know that it is there in our nucleic acid, both in RNA and DNA. Whenever we speak about the nucleic acid, we know the nucleic acid will have three chemical components. One will be a sugar. It will be deoxyribose in case of DNA and ribose in case of RNA. The second component will be the phosphate, H3PO4, orthophosphoric acid, and then the third one will be nitrogenous bases, which we have categorized them into purines and pyrimidines. The purines are like adenine and guanine, pyrimidines are like cytosine and thymine in case of DNA, cytosine and uracil in case of RNA there. And also the phosphorus will be there in cellular energy transfer system, cellular energy transport system. See, there we always write this ATP, adenosine triphosphate. You know, we refer it as a nucleotide of RNA. It will be having adenine and then one sugar, that is ribose sugar, and it will be there with 3 phosphate bonds, especially 3 phosphates are. And this is what exactly we say. Here, the phosphate is an important constituent. And you know that the ATP, we call that as energy currency. So, the energy currency will be the cellular energy transport system, mainly composes of phosphate. So, we are starting with phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus is an important constituent of biological membranes like cell membrane. It is an important constituent of nucleic acid, and it is an important constituent of cellular energy transport system represented by ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And especially, you know that many of the animals will require phosphorus for bones, especially to secrete the shell around them like in molluscans, and then for their bones they require, and also for their teeth. Shell, bones and teeth. Okay, for this, producing this, animals require the phosphorus. Apart from this, the natural reservoir for phosphorus will be the rock. And you know that, say if you just write down the schematic representation of the phosphorus cycle, you have rock minerals. The rock minerals in rocks, they contain phosphorus. When they undergo especially weathering, So some part of it of the phosphorus will dissolve in soil solution. Some part of phosphorus get dissolved in soil solution. So the rock minerals contain phosphorus. When these rock minerals will undergo weathering, it takes longer time. Okay, and you know that the weathering will also be brought about, will be assisted by the lichens, and then some part of this, whenever rock minerals are undergoing weathering, some part of the phosphorus in that weathered rock will form a soil solution in water, especially in soil, and that is uptaken by plants. The phosphorus that is found in soil in the form of soil solution will be uptaken by plants. When the plants are eaten by animals, and you know that we refer them as consumers. We have already categorized them. This is through food chain. So the phosphorus that is there in plants will be passed on to the consumers. And especially some part of the plants, especially you can say litter, that is the fallen leaves, especially, and also you know that the consumers will also die, the litter here, and it forms the detritus, the dead matter as such, dead organic matter you say, and you know that they undergo decomposition. While they undergo decomposition, whatever the phosphorus that is found in this litter and consumers, and then there is a certain bacteria here. We have certain bacteria, phosphate solubilizing bacteria. Here we have in decomposition phosphate solubilizing bacteria are there. And these solubilizing bacteria, phosphate solubilizing bacteria, will in turn add the phosphorus to the soil, back to the soil. And some part of the phosphorus in soil solution, whenever there is a rain, it may run off, and it may go to deep sediments in ocean or inside the soil, where it is lost forever. It may not come back. So this is what exactly the phosphorus cycle. I just repeat this. The main reservoir of phosphorus will be the rock minerals. The rock minerals constitute the important reservoir for phosphorus. When the rock undergoes weathering process, it is due to rainfall, sunlight, and also some sort of acids produced by the lichens, which we have discussed with reference to ecological succession. They also contribute to the weathering process. You know, it is a very slow process. Soil formation can take place from 500 to thousands of years, and especially during that period, some part of phosphorus found in the rock in the form of phosphates. The phosphorus which is found in rock will be in the form of phosphate. That phosphate will get dissolved and form the soil solution. And here, when the plants grow, they uptake that phosphate from soil solution for their metabolic activities, and in their plants the phosphorus will be used. When the plants are eaten by consumers through the food chain, whatever the phosphorus that is found in those plants, eaten part, will be passed on to consumers. And in the plants, especially trees, there is a falling of leaves. The fallen leaves in turn form the litter, and that litter will form the detritus along with the dead bodies of the consumers and also their waste. And the detritus will undergo decomposition. During the decomposition process by decomposers like bacteria and fungus, we have phosphate solubilizing bacteria, and they release whatever the phosphates will be there in their bodies, the plants as well as consumers, again back to soil solution. During the course, when there is a heavy rains, some part of the phosphate can run away and it may percolate through soil's particles into deep sediments where it may not return back to the circulation. And here, you know that there is, if you compare the phosphorus cycle with carbon cycle, the phosphate input into, especially through rainfall, is very smaller than carbon input. See, whenever the rainfall occurs, some part of the carbon which is there in the atmosphere may, through the rainfall, it may enter especially earth, but that will not happen with reference to phosphorus cycle. Through rainfall, the input of phosphorus into atmosphere will be negligible and it is smaller than carbon cycle. Second one is the gaseous exchange. When you compare to carbon cycle, you know that the carbons will be especially taken by, carbon dioxide will be taken by plants. They in turn release the oxygen and especially, and that way exchange. And also the plants, through the respiration, they release the carbon dioxide. The animals, through the respiration, release the carbon dioxide. That will not happen with reference to phosphorus cycle. So the phosphorus cycle and carbon dioxide cycle, that is input of carbon dioxide through rainfall, is especially much smaller when compared to carbon. Phosphorus input through rainfall is much smaller when compared to carbon input by rainfall. This is the first point. The respiratory release or exchange of carbon is very higher when compared to phosphorus. It is negligible, whereas respiratory release of phosphorus is very negligible. And here The phosphorus reservoir will be the rock. The carbon reservoir will be the ocean. From ocean it regulates the atmospheric carbon. As such, all the organisms they take from what is known to be the atmosphere, but it will come from the ocean as such. Thereby, the phosphorus cycle, the reservoir will be the rock. The carbon cycle, the reservoir will be atmosphere, but atmosphere contains only 1%, whereas the ocean contains 71%. These are the important points regarding to the phosphorus cycle. And coming on to ecosystem services. Ecosystem services. Ecosystem services. What are the benefits that entire living organisms will get from ecosystem? Healthy ecosystem is a basic need for wide range of economic, environmental and aesthetic. So we have got economic benefits from ecosystem, we'll get environmental benefit, and also we will get spiritual benefits from the healthy, very healthy ecosystem. A healthy ecosystem provides economic benefits in terms of the money, money tag. Environmental benefits. Environmental conditions will improve, in turn it will improve the conditions for all the living organisms. And also the spiritual wise especially. And apart from that, aesthetic value. Whenever you see especially opening of a flower, or especially the music or sound from the birds, bird singing especially, and all those things, morning sun rays and also raindrops, in the background of sunrise. So particularly it will improve, it will give a pleasure to the human beings. Such a thing we call that as aesthetic value. Apart from that, see, whatever the products we will get from ecosystem, and we say that ecosystem products. Ecosystem will be healthy, you can say healthy forest ecosystem. Healthy forest ecosystem will purify the air. It will help to purify the air, because there will be plenty of trees. They take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, and they purify the water. Whenever a healthy forest ecosystem, even though there is rain, the water will not get polluted, it is in turn get purified. And apart from that, it mitigates drought and floods. See, mitigate means less severe action, less impact See, healthy forest ecosystem will lower the effect of drought, or it will make the drought less severe, or it will make the flood less severe, and it will not allow the flooding, or it will not allow the drought to happen. Something like that. That's the meaning. Less severe effect. That is the mitigate. The meaning of the word mitigate. Less severe. And it will improve the nutrient cycling. See, healthy forest ecosystem will help in proper nutrient cycling, and apart from that, generate fertile soil. The fertile soil will be generated. It will be, and apart from that, it will provide the habitat for wildlife habitat. It is helpful for pollinating the crops. Several insects that are found in a healthy forest ecosystem will help in the pollination, and also it will provide the storage site for carbon. We are talking about what a healthy forest ecosystem can provide. The first thing is, the healthy forest ecosystem can purify the air, because plenty of plants will be there. They are helpful, especially absorbing the carbon dioxide and releasing the oxygen. You know that healthy forest ecosystem, the humus get formed, it will act as a sponge in nature. Whenever there is a torrential rain, it can hold water, release the water slowly due to the spongy nature of that humus. Thereby the water get purified. And apart from that, so the healthy forest ecosystem will help in the generation of fertile soil. The soil will become fertile due to lot of humus, and also it will help in nutrient cycling. It will help providing the storage site for carbon. It will lessen the impact of the drought. Mitigate means lessen the effect or lessen the severity. Mitigate the drought, mitigates the flood. It will not allow the drought to happen, or it will not allow flood to happen. Apart from that, the healthy forest ecosystem will provide the habitat, dwelling place or living place for wildlife, and it will help in pollinating the crops. And also it will improve the aesthetic value and spiritual value and cultural value. Healthy ecosystem, aesthetic value. See, whenever you visit a especially very good forest or well developed forest, you can say, there the greenery and everything, pure air, the flowing water, everything will make us enjoy. That is especially comes as aesthetic value. And also you know that when forest is there, cultural value also increases. And there comes several temple, and people will go for spiritual, and they visit the forest for spiritual, cultural and aesthetic value. That is what exactly meant by healthy forest ecosystem. And you know that such values in biodiversity, it is very difficult to determine, because we always think that it is free. We don't know the value of this because we are getting it freely. So thereby, whenever we get the things free, we will not properly value it. ಭಾಳ ಮನುಷ್ಯನಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಬುದ್ಧಿ ಅಂದರೆ, ಆತನಿಗೆ ಏನೇ ಫ್ರೀಯಾಗಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ರು ಅದ್ರ ಬೆಲೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥನೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. Ecosystem is providing all these things, but we take it very granted because it is given free to us, because the ecosystem is not putting any price tag to it. And actually it is having a very hefty price tag. Biodiversity. Robert Constanza and his associates means et al. They tried to put price tag to it. Okay, the life support which is provided by the ecosystem, they try to put in price tag, how much they are worth. So what exactly they are? Nature's life support, how much worth it is, taking all this into account. Soil formation, mitigate the drought, mitigate the floods, make the soil fertile, provide the wildlife habitat. It will also pollinate the what is known to be the crops, maintain biodiversity. So in all the things, they wanted to put a price tag to it, how much it worth. The researchers have found, especially, it worth around annually US dollars 33 trillion worth. The FT price tag of nature support by this ecosystem services all over the world, they worth this much price tag. And coming on to that is what exactly the fundamental ecosystem services. Fundamental ecosystem services that have been provided to us or to the living organism that is there in the ecosystem, this much worth. And so they also go for the valuing the grass national product. This we abbreviated as GNP. That is, it is the total value of all the things which are generated by humans, product. Okay, annually. This will be accounting for around US dollar 18 trillion. This is 18 trillion. You just hearing it is about doubling, you can say. Okay. So GNP, gross national products, it is the worth of the products what the humans are able to develop, and they price tag for all those things. When compared to the nature which is providing all this, this is what the comparison given by Robert Constanza and his associates. And out of this total the services, the soil formation itself will account for 50% in overall ecosystem services. In overall ecosystem services, the soil formation itself will account for 50%. Other thing like recreation and nutrient cycling that's happening will account for 10% of each. In overall ecosystem services, the soil formation that is happening in ecosystem will be accounting for the 50%. The recreation for the services like recreation and nutrient cycling will account for 10% of the each, whereas climate regulation and habitat climate regulation and providing habitat for wildlife will account for 6% of each. I just repeat. Say, we are discussing regarding ecosystem services. What is meant by ecosystem services? That is the services that has been provided by healthy ecosystem. See, if example for healthy ecosystem, let us say if a forest healthy ecosystem, what all the things it can do? First thing, it will help in purifying the air. Second, it will help in purifying the water. So, air will be purified because the carbon dioxide is taken by plants to release oxygen, taking only the photosynthesis into account, fresh air. And you know that the fertile humus that is formed in the forest will absorb the rain water like a sponge, and it will release the water very slowly. Thereby, the effect of the flood will be nullified. That is what exactly. And it will purify the water. It will not allow the pollution of water. Second thing is, it will mitigate the drought and floods. I did tell you, mitigate means less severe. It will not allow the drought to happen by allowing more rainfall, and also it will not allow the flood by absorbing the water and releasing it slowly like a sponge. And it will help in nutrient cycling, proper nutrient cycling through the proper ecosystem, and generate fertile soil, provide the habitat for wildlife, and also maintain biodiversity, and also pollinate the crops by so many insects that are there. So, the forest will be the house for many types of insects, which in turn pollinate the crops, and also provide aesthetic, spiritual and cultural value. Aesthetic means the pleasure. You know what is the pleasure of visiting a very good forest, I mean to say a very beautiful forest as such. Whenever you visit, so we get lot of pleasure inside, will be very happy at seeing so many types of plants, so many types of animals. Okay, so that is what exactly the aesthetic value. And you know that in other way, the people who are so associated with forest, they are culturally more advanced, and also they are more spiritually advanced. Many temples will be there in forest. Whenever we will go to visit them, that is what the spiritual is. And see, the ecosystem is providing us such a lot of services, but they are all coming free to us. That is why we do not care about them, because we think that is free. But their value is very high. Thereby, Robert Consdonza and his colleagues, they wanted to put a tag. They did a research on this. They went on to put a tag for it, especially for each of the services the healthy forest ecosystem or ecosystem can give. And roughly they estimated the services may value around annually all over the globe US dollar 33 trillion. That is the value of the ecosystem services. And then they went on to compare the grass national product, the products that have been developed by humans and then they have been labeled with rates. They account for US dollar 18 trillion. Whatever the man, other things we are doing on the earth, when compared to that, nature gifting us double the rate in terms of the services. And especially, so then they compared the soil formation from the ecosystem will account for 50% of the ecosystem services, whereas the recreation and the nutrient cycling is around 10% each. The climate regulation and providing the habitat for wildlife, they account for 6%. This is what an healthy ecosystem can provide to the nature. That is what exactly. And with this, we conclude this chapter, the ecosystem. Yeah. Thank you.